Good evening.
Hi, friends.
We interrupt tonight's program.
Do you hear them outside?
Do not answer your door.
When I was 6 years old, my parents hired a temporary live-in caregiver named Nora. My mother had just started working again after years of staying home with my little brother Elliot and me. My father liked to call it a new chapter whenever relatives asked how things were going, but even as a child, I remember hearing the strain in his voice when he said it, like he was reading from a script he hadn't practiced enough. At the time, everyone said Nora was exactly what our family needed. None of us understood what she carried into our house with her, until the summer she vanished without explanation, leaving us with more questions than answers. My first impression of Nora was how seamlessly she blended into our lives, making her caring presence feel almost too perfect, which subtly unsettled me. Adults talk to children the way people talk to cute animals in stores. Forced smiles, fake excitement, voices so high it didn't even sound real. Nora wasn't like that. She talked to me directly, as if I were someone worth listening to. She shook my hand the first day she arrived. "Nice to finally meet the captain of the Bluebeards," she said. I remember staring at her because I'd never told her about the Bluebeards before. That was the name Elliot gave our pirate crew. Elliot lit up immediately. He spent most of his childhood attached to someone's leg, too shy to speak around strangers. But within 10 minutes, Nora was kneeling on the living room carpet, helping him build a pirate ship from couch cushions. Now and then, she'd look at me and grin dramatically. "Captain," she'd whisper, "I think your first mate is mutinying." I loved her almost immediately. That's the part people never understand when I tell this story now. I wasn't afraid of Nora in the beginning. I thought she was wonderful. For the first week, the house felt lighter, but beneath that, I sensed a slow unraveling, as if something were quietly shifting out of sight. My mother laughed more. My father stopped bringing work calls to the dinner table. Elliot slept through thunderstorms for the first time in months because Nora would sit beside his bed, humming old songs none of us recognized. She cooked breakfast every morning in oversized sweaters that hung off one shoulder, while old radio stations crackled softly in the kitchen. Sometimes she danced slowly while flipping pancakes, barely aware anyone was watching. She felt warm, the way old houses do during rainstorms. Comforting, temporary. The first strange thing happened during one of our Bluebeards games in the backyard. Elliot and I were fake sword fighting with plastic pirate sabers while Nora pretended to steer our ship from the porch steps. At some point, Elliot swung too hard and accidentally smacked the back of Nora's hand. It wasn't serious, barely enough to leave a mark. It wasn't anger or pain, but a profound absence. Her expression flickered into something hollow, making me wonder what she was truly feeling. Not anger, not pain, absence. Her smile disappeared instantly, like someone had switched off a light behind her face. She stared down at her hand for a second too long. Elliot immediately apologized, eyes wide with panic, but Nora didn't answer right away. Then softly, almost distractedly, she said, "I think I'm done playing for now." That was all. No yelling, no frustration. But the game ended there anyway. Even Elliot noticed something had gone wrong. Later that night, she was cheerful again, helping us brush our teeth and joking about pirate treasure maps. But something felt different after that. Like I had briefly seen a version of Nora she hadn't meant to show us. A few nights later, I woke up around midnight, needing water. The hallway outside the guest room glowed faintly beneath Nora's door. As I walked past her door, I glimpsed the dim hallway glow faintly beneath it, and I could hear her voice, tense and hushed, on the phone, adding a layer of quiet tension to the scene. You always say that, she hissed quietly. A long pause followed. No, this one is different. Another pause. You don't know that. I remember standing completely still outside her room. The strange thing was that I never heard another voice, just silence between Nora's responses. Then finally, I'm not running this time. Something creaked beneath my foot. The talking stopped. Inside the room, I could see Nora through the vanity mirror, facing her bed. She was staring directly at me. Not angry, not embarrassed, emotionless. Even now, decades later, I still struggle to describe that expression, because expression implies emotion. There was none. It looked like she'd forgotten how to be a person for a second. Then suddenly she smiled, warm, gentle, familiar. You should be asleep, sweetheart. The next morning, she acted as if nothing had happened. That became the pattern with Nora. Something unsettling would slip through the cracks, and then vanish so quickly I'd convince myself I imagined it. The first time I became truly afraid of her happened over a bowl of cereal. My mother had started staying later at work by then. My father pretended not to mind, but little things had begun changing around the house. He drank more beer during dinner. My mother stopped singing while cooking. Conversations felt shorter somehow. That morning, Elliot accidentally knocked his cereal onto the kitchen floor. I was halfway down the stairs when I heard Nora snap. "Can you please stop making messes for once?" Her voice startled me, not because she yelled, because of how cold she sounded. Elliot froze immediately. I stepped into the kitchen, and the second Nora saw me, her entire face changed. Instantly. Like watching someone pull a mask back over themselves. "Oh," she said brightly. "Good morning." Elliot stared down at the floor while Nora crouched beside him, suddenly soft again, helping clean the milk with exaggerated gentleness. I remember feeling confused more than scared. The fear came later. That night, another phone call came. I only remember it because of how quiet Nora sounded this time. Rain tapped softly against the windows, while I stood halfway down the hallway, listening. I said, "I'm trying." Silence. "They're good boys." Another pause. Nora's shoulders stiffened slightly. "Don't say that." The silence stretched longer this time. Then finally, "I'm not her." The line went dead. Nora stayed standing there, holding the phone to her ear, long after the call ended. For the first time, she looked afraid. The phone calls continued after that, always late, always answered by Nora, and every time afterward, the house seemed to grow heavier somehow. Then one afternoon, the phone rang while my parents were gone. That alone felt strange. The daytime calls never seemed to upset Nora the way the nighttime ones did. But this one did. I remember seeing her hesitate before answering. Not frightened, ashamed. She stepped quietly into the kitchen while Elliot watched cartoons upstairs. I only meant to ask if we could have popsicles before dinner. Instead, I stopped in the hallway when I heard another voice for the first time all summer. A woman's voice, gentle, tired. "Nora," she said softly, "I need you to be honest with me." Long silence. Then, "Have the calls been happening again?" Every hair on my arms stood up. Nora didn't answer immediately. She stared down at the kitchen floor like she was listening to something else first, something only she could hear. Finally, she whispered, "Sometimes." The woman on the phone spoke again, too quietly for me to fully hear. Then, "And when they happen, do you respond?" Nora's breathing grew uneven. Again she paused, listening, waiting, then quietly, "I try not to." Another silence, long enough for me to realize something I still wish I hadn't. Nobody else had been speaking during those pauses at night. Nora had been answering in silence. The day of the stain happened near the end of summer. Elliot and I had finished lunch and gone upstairs while Nora cleaned the kitchen. I came back down for my toy pirates and found her scrubbing the counter viciously with a rag. At first, I couldn't even see what she was cleaning, just a faint grey mark near the sink. But Nora kept scrubbing harder and harder, muttering under her breath. "You ruin everything." Scrub. Pathetic. Scrub. Can't even keep things clean. Her voice sounded wrong, hollow somehow. I stood frozen in the doorway until the floor creaked beneath me. Nora turned sharply. "What are you looking at?" The words cracked through the kitchen so suddenly that I physically jumped. Then came the part that still haunts me. Her anger vanished instantly. Not calm, gone. For one terrible second, she just looked exhausted. Not angry, not cruel. Just deeply, painfully tired. Like she hated herself for letting me see her like that. Then she walked silently past me and shut herself inside her room. No apology, no explanation. Later that night, I woke again to the sound of her crying softly downstairs. Not dramatic crying, quiet, ashamed. I crept toward the kitchen and heard her whispering into the phone. I didn't mean to. Silence. It just came out. Another pause, then shorter this time. I don't know why I do that. I remember gripping the hallway wall tightly, because for the first time in my life, an adult sounded scared in a way children usually are. Then Nora whispered something I still think about even now. "I think something's wrong with me." The line disconnected shortly afterward. That night, my parents fought for the first time. Not loudly, that almost would have been easier. It started at dinner after my mother casually mentioned she'd probably be working late again the next evening. My father laughed bitterly into his drink. At least someone enjoys being out of the house. Then Nora said quietly, "I thought she stayed in the parking lot after work for an hour before coming home." Silence. I still remember the way my mother slowly lowered her fork. Nora looked genuinely confused afterward, like she didn't understand what she'd done. But something changed in the house after that. The warmth disappeared. My father started sleeping on the couch some nights. My mother became distant. Elliot stopped asking to play Bluebeards, and Nora. Nora grew calmer. That was the strangest part. The more the house unraveled, the more emotionally settled she seemed. 3 weeks after my father's accident, I found my mother standing alone in the kitchen late one night, washing the same plate over and over beneath the sink water. Nora stood quietly in the doorway, watching her. Neither of them spoke for a long time. Then, finally, my mother laughed softly to herself. "Sometimes I drive around after work because I don't feel ready to come back here yet." She kept scrubbing the plate. Does that make me a bad mother? I remember Nora's face changing when she heard that. Not emotionless this time. Heartbroken. Like something inside her recognized the question. After a long silence, Nora answered quietly, "No." Just that. No reassurance, no speech. But I think that was the moment Nora finally saw her own childhood unfolding inside our house. A few nights later, I woke up to voices downstairs again. I crept halfway down the staircase and saw my father sitting at the kitchen counter with a beer in his hand, while Nora quietly wiped down the stove. "This house feels calmer when you're around," he told her. Nora didn't answer. My father laughed softly. "You listen better than she does lately." Something about the way he said it made my stomach hurt, even though I didn't fully understand why. Then Nora looked up and saw me standing there. That same emotionless expression crossed her face for half a second before she smiled again. The next morning, without thinking, I mentioned it at breakfast. Dad said he likes talking to Nora when he drinks. I didn't understand why the room went silent. That night, my parents fought so badly that Elliot started crying in his room. My father left the house afterward. 3 days later, there was an accident. I remember waking up to the phone ringing after midnight. My mother answered, then silence, then crying. The details came later. My father had been drinking, his truck wrapped around a guardrail less than 20 minutes from town. He survived. Barely. When he finally came home weeks later, he walked with a limp and barely looked my mother in the eyes. They stayed together. That might have been the saddest part. Nothing exploded. Nothing ended. The house simply became colder, quieter. Like everyone had silently agreed to stop mentioning what hurt them. I think Nora realized it too. One night, long after everyone else had gone to sleep, I saw her standing alone in the hallway staring at our family photo near the kitchen. Not smiling, not crying, just staring. She looked heartbroken, like she'd seen this exact family before. That same night, the final phone call came. No rain, no television, no sound at all except the soft static of the kitchen light. I remember seeing Nora sitting alone at the table wrapped in an oversized sweater, barefoot, holding the phone tightly against her ear. She looked impossibly small. For the first time all summer, Nora sounded like a child. I tried to be good here. Silence. I really did. Her voice trembled slightly. Please stop being mad at me. I remember feeling frozen in the hallway listening to her, because whatever frightened Nora suddenly felt older than our house, older than her. Then quietly, barely above a whisper, she said, "I don't want to stay here anymore." A long silence followed, then finally, "I think I ruin families." The line disconnected. Nora remained sitting there, staring into nothing for a long time. The next morning, Nora was gone. No note, no goodbye. Her room sat empty except for a neatly folded sweater on the bed. My mother said she must have left early for another job. My father never said a word. While everyone searched the house in confusion, I noticed the family photo near the kitchen counter. The edge of it was slightly burned black. Just one corner, like it had been held too close to a flame. Probably the candle, my mother said quietly. But I remember staring at the photo for a long time, at our smiling faces, at the tiny scorch mark creeping inward from the edge. Later that afternoon, I found Elliot sitting on the living room floor, holding one of our old Bluebeard's pirate flags. Quietly, he looked up at me and asked, "Did we make Nora sad?" I didn't know how to answer him. A few minutes later, while helping my mother clean the house, I noticed the Bluebeard's flag sitting near the top of the trash bin. Not ripped, not ruined, just quietly thrown away. Years later, I still think about Nora sometimes. Not because of the phone calls, not because of the accident. After Nora left, my parents stayed together, but the version of our family that existed before her never really came back.